The comment appeared under my latest Instagram post like a knife to the heart. Just friends. Nothing more. Roman had written in response to a fan asking if we were together, completely erasing the 2 years we'd spent building a life in secret. My hands shook as I stared at the screen, the man I loved denying everything we'd shared in one careless reply. That night in our Los Angeles apartment, I waited for Roman to come home from his late meeting at his finance firm downtown. The city lights from our high-rise balcony seemed mocking now, twinkling as if nothing had changed. When the door clicked open at 11, Roman stepped in, his tailored suit jacket slung over one shoulder, looking every bit the successful 30-year-old executive he was. "Kyler, babe, you won't believe the deal I closed today," he started. But his words died when he saw my face. "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper at first, then rising. "Why did you comment that we're just friends? After everything?" He froze, then rubbed his temples. "Look, it's not what you think. The partners at the firm are old school. One whisper of me being gay and the promotion I've been eyeing for months? Gone. It was a split-second decision to protect us both." "Protect us?" I laughed bitterly, tears stinging my eyes. "By pretending I don't exist? By making me feel like some dirty secret?" Roman crossed the room, trying to pull me into a hug, but I stepped back. "It's temporary, Kyler. Once I'm established, we can be more open. You know how much I love you." But did I? The doubt crept in like fog from the Pacific. We'd met 2 years ago at a charity event in LA, where Roman's firm sponsored and I was there as a struggling photographer trying to make it as an influencer. Our connection was instant. Stolen glances, late-night talks about dreams and fears. He was out to close friends but not publicly, and I had respected that, keeping our photos private, our dates discreet. Now, with one comment, it felt like all that respect was thrown back in my face. I spent the night on the couch, Roman's apologies echoing in my head as he went to bed alone. The next morning, the comments under the post had exploded. Some supporters called Roman out for being shady. Others dismissed it as drama. My DMs were flooded with questions from followers who had suspected we were more than roommates. By afternoon, my phone rang. It was my sister back in Austin, Texas. "Kyler, what is going on? Mom saw the post and she's freaking out. She wants to know if you're really, with that guy." Her voice was laced with the same concern that had followed me since I came out to the family 5 years ago. They accepted it but never fully embraced it, especially not with the social media spotlight. I sighed, explaining the situation without the full details. "It's complicated, sis. Roman's career is on the line." She hesitated. "Maybe it's a sign, Kyler. Maybe you deserve someone who isn't ashamed." Her words stung because deep down I wondered the same. Over the next week, tension in the apartment grew. Roman tried to make it up with flowers and promises of weekend getaways, but I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Friends from the gay community in West Hollywood reached out, some offering support, others warning me that closeted relationships rarely end well. One friend, Marcus, a fellow influencer, suggested I turn the pain into content. "Post about authenticity, man. Your followers will eat it up." The idea lingered. Perhaps this was the push I needed to stop hiding behind Roman's shadow. My own career as a lifestyle influencer had stalled. Posts about coffee shops and hikes weren't cutting it. Maybe it was time to share my truth, even if it meant losing the man I thought was my forever. The argument peaked on Friday night. Roman came home early, hoping to talk. "Kyler, I messed up. I deleted the comment, but the damage is done. Can we just move past this?" "Move past it," I snapped, standing from the kitchen table where I'd been editing photos. "You made me question if our love was ever real. How am I supposed to trust you now?" He looked defeated, his usually confident eyes clouded. "Because I do love you. More than the job, more than anything. Give me time." But time was what I didn't have. The next day, I packed a bag and headed to a friend's place in Silver Lake. The drive through LA traffic gave me space to think. Was this the end, or the beginning of something bigger? My heart ached, but a small spark of determination flickered. Maybe Roman's denial was the catalyst I needed to find my own voice. I crashed on Marcus's couch that night, the hum of the city outside a constant reminder that life kept moving. He didn't push for details, just handed me a beer and said, "Whatever happens, you're not alone in this community." His words were simple, but they landed like an anchor. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen without conditions. The following Monday, I sat in a small coffee shop in Echo Park, laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. My draft post read, "Sometimes the person you love most is the one who teaches you how to love yourself." I hit publish before I could overthink it. Within hours, the likes poured in. Comments from strangers poured in too. "This hit hard. Thank you for being real." For the first time in months, my feed felt like mine again. Roman texted that evening, "Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time before typing back one word. No, it wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. I needed space to figure out who Kyler was without being Roman's secret. Back in Austin, my mom called again, her voice softer this time. "We just want you happy, honey. If he can't give you that publicly, maybe it's time to let go." Her acceptance surprised me. For years, I'd carried the weight of their quiet disappointment. Now it felt like a door cracking open instead of slamming shut. Marcus introduced me to a local photographer collective the next weekend. We met at a warehouse gallery in downtown LA, the air thick with the smell of fresh prints and espresso. I showed them my work, raw, unfiltered shots of everyday queer life in the city. One of the organizers, a tall guy named Diego, nodded approvingly. "This has voice. We're doing a group exhibit next month. You in?" I said yes before doubt could creep in. That night, alone in Marcus's spare room, I scrolled through old photos of Roman and me. Hidden smiles at Griffith Observatory, quiet dinners in Little Tokyo. The memories hurt, but they no longer defined me. For the first time, I saw the possibility of a future that belonged only to me. The denial that had shattered me was slowly rebuilding something stronger. I closed the laptop, ready for whatever came next. The exhibit opening in downtown LA was packed with artists, influencers, and curious locals. My series, titled Invisible Threads, hung on the far wall. Black and white shots of queer couples holding hands in public but never quite touching, a metaphor for the secrecy I'd lived. People lingered, whispering. A journalist from a local LGBT magazine pulled me aside. "Your work captures the cost of hiding. Mind if I interview you for a feature?" I agreed, heart racing. The article dropped 2 days later, and my follower count doubled overnight. Brands started reaching out not for generic lifestyle posts but for campaigns about mental health and authenticity in the queer community. I signed my first paid gig with a wellness app targeting gay men. The paycheck wasn't huge, but it was mine. Roman kept texting. "I saw the article. I'm proud of you." Then, "Can we meet for coffee? I miss you." I read every message, but I never replied. The silence wasn't punishment. It was protection. Every time I thought about him, the old ache returned, but so did the memory of that Instagram comment. I couldn't go back to being invisible. My sister flew out for a long weekend. We sat on the beach in Santa Monica, waves crashing as she said, "You look different, Kyler. Lighter." She was right. The constant knot in my chest had loosened. We talked about family. Dad's quiet pride, Mom's worry, and for the first time I didn't feel like I owed them an explanation for my happiness. "I'm building something real," I told her. "Not for anyone else." Marcus introduced me to his agent, Lena, a no-nonsense woman who managed several queer creators. Over lunch in West Hollywood, she flipped through my portfolio. "You have the story and the visuals. Let's turn this into a series. Pitch it as Living Out Loud. Weekly posts and videos about navigating life after betrayal and finding your power." We signed the contract that afternoon. The first video went live on a Tuesday. I sat in my new studio apartment in Silver Lake, camera rolling, and spoke honestly about the denial, the pain, and the choice to choose myself. Comments flooded in thousands within hours. "This is exactly what I needed to hear. You just described my last relationship." Shares poured across platforms. My inbox filled with messages from young gay men across the country who felt seen. Roman's firm made headlines that same week, a major merger that boosted his profile. I saw his face on a business podcast thumbnail and felt nothing but distant curiosity. The man who once defined my world now felt like a chapter I'd already closed. One evening, Diego from the collective invited me to a rooftop party in DTLA. The city sparkled below us as we talked about art and ambition. He asked about Roman. I told him the truth without flinching. He taught me what I won't accept anymore. Diego smiled. Good. You deserve someone who shouts your name from the rooftops. That night, I walked home through quiet streets, the cool breeze carrying the scent of jacaranda trees. For the first time since the denial, I felt completely at peace with my decision. The success wasn't about revenge. It was about becoming the man I was always meant to be. The next morning, a brand deal landed in my email. A national campaign with a major apparel company featuring real stories from the LGBT community. They wanted me as one of the faces. The shoot was scheduled in New York in 3 weeks. I booked the flight without hesitation. Los Angeles had been the place of my heartbreak. Maybe the East Coast would be the place of my breakthrough. Roman sent one last text before I left. I saw the campaign announcement. You're incredible, Kyler. I'm sorry I couldn't be the man you needed. I read it once, then deleted the thread. The plane took off into the sunset, and as LA disappeared below me, I realized I no longer needed his apology. My story was mine to tell now. New York hit me like a second chance wrapped in concrete and possibility. The campaign shoot took place in a bright Brooklyn studio overlooking the Manhattan skyline. I stood in front of the camera wearing a simple white shirt, telling the director, "This isn't just fashion. It's about wearing your truth." They loved it. The final ad went viral within days, racking up millions of views. My agent Lena called screaming, "You're trending, Kyler." I rented a small apartment in Williamsburg, the kind with exposed brick and a view of the bridge. Mornings were spent writing, not just captions but actual essays for my growing newsletter. Subscribers climbed past 50,000. I spoke at a local LGBT center about the courage it takes to walk away from love that asks you to shrink. The room was full, and when I finished, a young guy came up to me with tears in his eyes. "You gave me the strength to come out to my parents." That moment meant more than any brand deal. Back in Texas, my family watched every video. Mom texted weekly photos of her garden with notes like, "So proud of my brave boy." Dad even left a voicemail. "That speech you gave, it made me think. I'm sorry we weren't louder supporters sooner." Their words healed old wounds I hadn't realized still stung. Marcus flew out for a visit. We wandered Central Park, leaves turning gold around us. "You're glowing, man," he said. "Roman who?" We laughed, but the name still carried weight. Not pain anymore, just a reminder of how far I'd come. The invitations kept coming. A panel at a digital creators conference in Chicago, a guest spot on a popular queer podcast in San Francisco. I traveled light, carrying only my camera and the quiet confidence I'd built. Each city taught me something new. In Chicago, I learned that vulnerability is strength. In San Francisco, I learned that community is family you choose. Roman's name surfaced again through a mutual friend. He'd been promoted, but the friend whispered that he seemed quieter lately, less flashy on social media. I didn't ask for details. His world and mine had diverged completely. The denial that once broke me had become the very thing that set me free. One crisp November evening in New York, I stood on the High Line watching the sun set over the Hudson. My phone buzzed, an email from a literary agent. "Your essays have incredible voice. Let's talk book deal." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. This was bigger than videos or campaigns. This was legacy. I called Lena immediately. She screamed again. "We're doing this, Kyler. Your story is going to help so many people." That night, I wrote the proposal outline until dawn. The working title came easily, Louder Than Silence. It wasn't about Roman. It was about every queer person who'd ever been asked to dim their light. The words flowed because they were true. Every scar, every triumph, every step I'd taken alone. The book deal came through 2 weeks later. I signed the contract in a Manhattan cafe, the agent sliding the papers across the table with a grin. "This is going to change lives, kid." I signed with steady hands. For the first time, the future felt wide open and entirely mine. The book writing process consumed me. Mornings in my Williamsburg apartment were quiet except for the clack of keys and the distant rumble of the J train. I poured everything onto the page. The Instagram comment that started it all, the nights I cried on Marcus's couch, the moment I chose myself on that flight to New York. The manuscript grew chapter by chapter, each one a piece of armor I no longer needed to wear. My publisher scheduled a small tour: Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. In each city, I met readers who shared their own stories of denial and breakthrough. A man in Boston hugged me after my talk and whispered, "I left my partner last month because of your words. I'm scared, but I'm free." His courage mirrored mine. Between tour stops, I flew home to Austin for Christmas. The family table felt different this year, no secrets, no careful omissions. My sister toasted to the man who taught us all how to speak up. Mom cried happy tears. Dad clapped me on the back and said, "You did good, son." Their pride-filled spaces I hadn't known were empty. Roman's name finally came up over pecan pie. My sister asked gently, "Have you heard from him?" I shook my head. "And I don't need to." That chapter closed the day he chose silence. The table nodded. No one pressed. For the first time, talking about him didn't hurt. It just was. Back in New York, the edits arrived. My editor wrote in the margins, "This is raw and necessary." I worked late into the nights, refining every sentence until the book felt like a living thing. When the final draft went to print, I stood on my rooftop and breathed in the cold air. The city lights stretched forever, just like my future. The release date was set for June, Pride Month. The marketing team planned a launch party in New York with a panel discussion. Invitations went out to influencers, activists, and media. My follower count hit 7 figures. Brands wanted partnerships. Podcasts wanted interviews. Success wasn't a dream anymore. It was my daily reality. Marcus flew in for the launch. We stood outside the venue as guests arrived. The summer evening warm and full of possibility. "Look at you," he said, grinning. "From that couch in Silver Lake to this." I laughed, but inside I felt the full weight of the journey. Every tear, every doubt, every brave yes had led here. The panel went beautifully. I spoke about the day Roman denied me and how that single comment became the spark for everything that followed. The audience listened, some wiping tears. When the Q&A opened, a young woman asked, "Do you regret any of it?" I answered without hesitation, "Not for a second." The denial forced me to find my voice, and now I use it to help others find theirs. Afterward, people lined up for signed copies. I smiled for photos, shook hands, accepted hugs. The energy in the room was electric: hope, resilience, community. This was the family I'd built, the life I'd chosen. That night, back in my apartment, I opened a bottle of champagne alone. The city hummed below. I raised my glass to the reflection in the window, to the man who refused to stay silent. The words felt like victory. The book hit the bestseller list in its second week. Louder Than Silence climbed charts, and suddenly my face was everywhere. Morning shows, magazine covers, even a feature in the New York Times. Interviews blurred together, but one question always surfaced. "What happened to the boyfriend who denied you?" I always gave the same answer: "That part of my story belongs to the past. This book is about the future." Opportunities multiplied. A major streaming service approached me about adapting the book into a limited series. I met with writers in Los Angeles, walking the same streets where the pain had started. The city felt smaller now, less threatening. I visited the old apartment building once, standing across the street just to prove to myself I could. The balcony lights were on, but the man inside was no longer part of my world. Roman reached out through a mutual friend this time. "He's been watching everything," the friend said carefully. "He's proud, but he's also struggling." I listened without anger. "Tell him I wish him well, but my door is closed." The friend nodded. Some chapters don't need epilogues. The adaptation deal closed in September. I flew back to New York with a new sense of purpose. The writers wanted me involved in every step, making sure the story honored the truth without sensationalizing the pain. We spent long days in conference rooms shaping characters who felt real. I insisted the protagonist's journey end in self-worth, not revenge. The strongest ending, I told them, is when he no longer needs to explain himself. Fall turned to winter. I spent Thanksgiving with Marcus and Diego in a cabin upstate. Snow fell softly outside while we cooked and laughed. Diego asked if I was dating anyone. I smiled. Not yet. I'm still learning how to be with someone who chooses me out loud. They both raised their glasses. To choosing yourself first. The new year brought more milestones. I spoke at the Human Rights Campaign Gala in Washington, D.C., standing on stage in a tailored suit, the audience full of faces that looked like mine. 2 years ago, I was erased with one comment. I said, "Today I stand here because I refused to disappear." The applause thundered. That night I called my parents. Mom cried again, happy tears. "You're changing the world, baby." Roman's company announced a major rebrand that spring. His face appeared in business magazines, but something in his eyes looked different, quieter. I saw one interview where he was asked about work-life balance. He hesitated before answering. "I've learned that success means nothing if you can't share it with the people who matter." The words landed softly, but they didn't move me. I had already learned that lesson on my own. The streaming series began filming in June. I visited the set in Brooklyn, watching actors bring my words to life. The actor playing my character looked nothing like me, but the emotion was exact. During a break, he pulled me aside. "Thank you for writing this. I came out because of your book." Moments like that reminded me why the pain had been worth it. Summer heat settled over the city as the first trailer dropped. Millions watched within hours. Comments poured in. "This is my story. Thank you for showing us we can rise." My phone stayed on silent most days. I no longer needed constant validation. Success had become quiet confidence instead of loud proof. One evening I sat on my rooftop again, the same spot where I'd toasted the book deal. The skyline glittered, unchanged yet completely different. I thought about the boy who once waited on a couch for an apology that never felt enough. That boy was gone. In his place stood a man who owed no one an explanation. The series premiered to record numbers. Critics called it a landmark in queer storytelling. And suddenly my name was on every list. Influencers changing culture, voices of the next generation. I walked red carpets in Los Angeles, smiling for cameras that once captured only my pain. The circle felt complete. Marcus and Diego flew in for the premiere party. We stood on a rooftop overlooking the city where everything began. Marcus raised his glass. To the denial that started it all. We laughed, the sound light and free. Diego added quietly. And to the man who turned it into something beautiful. Late that night, after the guests left, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. "Kyler, it's Roman. I watched the whole series. You were right, I should have chosen you out loud.
I'm sorry.
I hope you're happy." I read it once, the old ache nowhere to be found. My fingers hovered, then typed, "I am. Thank you for the lesson." I hit send, then blocked the number. Not out of anger, out of peace. Some doors close so better ones can open. The next morning I flew home to Austin for a quiet week with family. We sat on the back porch, fireflies dancing in the dark. Mom asked, "Any regrets, honey?" I smiled. "None. Every step brought me here." Dad nodded, proud in the way only fathers can be. My sister squeezed my hand. "You showed us all how to be brave." Back in New York, life settled into a beautiful rhythm. I started a foundation to fund mental health resources for young queer creators. The first grant went to a photography program in LA, the same city where my story began. Watching the kids light up behind cameras felt like full circle. One crisp autumn afternoon I walked through Central Park, leaves crunching underfoot. A stranger recognized me and asked for a photo. "Your story saved me," he said simply. I hugged him. These moments were the real success. Not the charts or the deals, but the lives changed quietly. As winter approached, I sat down to write the next book. The working title came easily, no explanation needed. It wasn't a sequel. It was a celebration. The words flowed freely because I no longer carried the weight of anyone else's silence. Success had taught me the most important lesson. The greatest freedom is never having to justify who you love or who you've become. I looked out my window at the glowing city and smiled. The journey that started with a single denial had led me to a life louder than any apology could ever be. True or false? Hiding your true self is ever worth the price of success?